Yes, to some extent there has been a change in the conditions that traditional knowledge has been accustomed to. Frankly, there's also been a change in human behavior, and how much of that knowledge has been passed on, or how much of it has been continued to be honed and kept up to date. If you're out living in a snow igloo, traveling by dog team all the time, what's going on in the weather is essential to you 24/7. If you're living in a house waiting for your soap opera to come on and you're thinking about going hunting this weekend, your degree of attention to that weather may not be nearly so high. We also heard among, say, Sami reindeer herders in Scandinavia, when they used to travel in sledges pulled by a couple of reindeer, you're standing on the sledge, you can have a conversation. The older fellow, the father, talks to his son, explains the place names, talks about things that are going on. It's a great opportunity to share all of the things that are going on. If you're driving around in a snowmobile, you're not having a conversation.
It's too loud.
It's too loud and it's too fast. And so, you're not, there are some very real differences in the way that knowledge is accumulated, applied, transmitted, and so on. And having said that, yes, there are certainly cases you hear about with people that something happens and people just were not equipped to predict that because the conditions have changed beyond the range of experience that they've had. Having said that, I wouldn't be too quick to dismiss the relevance of traditional knowledge, and it's not just a case of knowing exactly how to read the ice conditions and make sure that you can get from here to there on the ice. There's also a tremendous amount of sort of wisdom of how to deal with changing conditions. If nothing else, just the patience. When you talk to the old timers, one of the things that you hear again and again in some of the early accounts of European explorers meeting Inuit was the sense of patience. I don't know if it's a completely true story, but it certainly sounds interesting from Greenland of the days when they needed to go get some grass. I think maybe they had sheep, or maybe it was for bedding or linings for your boots or something. But the Inuit family went up to the head of the fjord and the grass wasn't ready to be harvested, so they waited. Who of us sits around, we sort of talk about sitting around watching the grass grow as if it's a horrible thing, not as if it's something you do if the grass isn't long enough. Similarly with, you hear reports now about, the people went out and they hunted and they got a couple animals and then the weather turned bad and the animals, the meat was lost because they couldn't get back. Well, in the old days they didn't have refrigerators, they didn't have freezers, so they knew how to take care of the game properly. And if you've now lost the sort of skill or the way of looking at things that says, okay, we need to start to dry the meat, we need to do this, we need to do that, you'd become dependent on access to things like electricity and a freezer. I don't know if that's loss of traditional knowledge or if it's sort of loss of some of the skills and thinking that goes behind the way of surviving in a world that can be unpredictable.